Ethan Harrington's name carried weight in every corner of the business world. At 32, he had built a reputation not just as the heir of the Harrington dynasty, but as the man who had doubled the family fortune with ruthless brilliance. His empire spanned finance, technology, and real estate, and his face appeared regularly on magazine covers. Sharp jawline, storm-gray eyes, and the kind of tailored elegance that made him look untouchable. To the public, he was the epitome of success, the billionaire every woman wanted and every man envied. Yet, his fame carried a peculiar shadow. For years, wealthy socialites, fashion models, and heiresses had tried to claim his heart, but Ethan's rejection of them was as legendary as his fortune. At charity galas, he would dance once, offer a polite smile, and then disappear before the night was over. Tabloids dubbed him the man who wants no woman, spinning rumors that he was cold, incapable of love, or simply too arrogant to settle down. The truth, however, was something the headlines never captured. Behind the polished image and guarded expression was a man who longed for something real, something money could not buy. Ethan had grown weary of practiced smiles and rehearsed compliments, tired of women who loved his wealth but not the man beneath. At night, in his penthouse overlooking the glittering city, he often sat alone with a glass of scotch, surrounded by silence that mocked his success. He told himself he didn't need love, that his empire was enough. But in the quiet, when no one was watching, he felt the hollowness pressing in. Wealth had given him everything, except the one thing he secretly desired: authenticity, a connection untouched by ambition or greed. While Ethan Harrington's world revolved around skyscrapers and billion-dollar deals, Amara Johnson's life was painted with the quiet colors of the countryside. She was a 26-year-old black woman whose hands bore the calluses of farm work, yet her spirit radiated warmth and resilience. Amara lived with her parents and younger brother in a modest wooden farmhouse on the edge of a small southern town, where cornfields stretched endlessly and neighbors treated each other like family. Her days began at sunrise, with a rhythmic crowing of roosters and the smell of earth still wet with dew. She fed chickens, tended to the crops, and helped her father repair fences, her laughter carrying through the fields like music. Despite the hard labor, she embraced it with pride. For Amara, every chore was more than survival. It was love poured into the land that had sustained her family for generations. Yet, beneath her grounded exterior lived dreams that soared beyond the farm. Amara yearned for education, hoping one day to study agricultural science and use her knowledge to improve life in her community. College brochures were tucked away in her nightstand drawer, read over and over like secret promises. But she had sworn to herself that no dream, no matter how big, would ever make her forget where she came from or who she was. Her life stood in stark contrast to Ethan's glittering empire. Where he was surrounded by glass towers and designer suits, she was wrapped in the simplicity of cotton dresses and muddy boots. He lived under the gaze of flashing cameras, while her beauty shone only in the quiet admiration of her neighbors. Yet in her simplicity there was a richness, one born not of wealth, but of authenticity and unshakable values. Ethan Harrington had little patience for charity events, especially those outside the city. His sister Claire, however, insisted that attending the countryside fundraiser for local schools would help soften his reputation. Begrudgingly he agreed, though he arrived with his usual air of detachment, dressed in an immaculate suit that set him apart from the rustic crowd. As expected, the moment he stepped onto the fairground, a wave of wealthy women descended on him like moths to flame. They wore pearls, silk, and carefully rehearsed smiles, each vying for his attention with compliments that rang hollow. Ethan's polite nods and short answers were his only defense as he searched for an escape from the suffocating circle. It was then, in his quiet retreat toward the refreshment tables, that fate intervened. Amara Johnson, volunteering as a server, hurried past with a tray stacked high with lemonade glasses. Distracted by a group of children calling her name, she didn't notice the tall man in her path until it was too late. The collision sent one glass tipping, splashing cold liquid across Ethan's sleeve. "Oh my, sir, I'm so sorry," Amara exclaimed, eyes wide with genuine alarm. She scrambled to set the tray down and grabbed napkins, dabbing at his jacket without hesitation. Ethan was stunned, not by the spill, but by her lack of fear or calculated charm. Most women would have apologized profusely, perhaps tried to flirt to soften the moment. But Amara was simply herself, earnest, apologetic, and utterly unconcerned with who he was. He found himself smiling, a rare, unguarded expression. "It's just a jacket," he said, surprising even himself. In that brief moment, amidst laughter and apologies, something sparked. For the first time in years, Ethan's guarded world shifted, drawn by her authenticity. Ethan Harrington was not a man easily distracted, yet in the days following the countryside fundraiser, his thoughts kept circling back to the young woman who had spilled lemonade on his sleeve. Amara Johnson. Her name lingered in his mind with unusual persistence, not because of the accident, but because of the way she had treated him. She hadn't been dazzled by his name or fortune. Truthfully, she hadn't seemed to care at all. Used to women chasing his wealth and reputation, Ethan found her indifference strangely magnetic. He replayed the scene in his mind, the quick smile, the sincerity in her apology, the way she spoke without artifice. For the first time in years, he wondered what it might be like to know someone who valued honesty more than prestige. It wasn't long before he found himself back in that small town, under the convenient excuse of donating funds to local schools and agricultural projects. The media praised his sudden interest in rural development, but Ethan knew his true reason. He wanted to see her again. Their encounters were brief at first. A few words exchanged while she worked at the community center, a shared laugh over her teasing him about not knowing how to milk a cow. The contrast between them was glaring. His world of skyscrapers and hers of farmland. Yet, in their conversations, he discovered surprising similarities. Dreams of building, of creating something meaningful, of leaving behind more than just a name. And with each meeting, fascination deepened into something more dangerous. Longing. It did not take long for whispers to travel from the countryside into the glittering circles of high society. The tabloids were the first to strike, snapping a blurred photograph of Ethan speaking with Amara outside the community center. Within hours, headlines screamed across glossy covers. "Billionaire caught with country girl. Who is she?" In the drawing rooms of Manhattan and Beverly Hills, the wealthy women who had long pursued Ethan exchanged mocking laughter. To them, Amara was not competition but a joke. "She's too simple," one sneered at a luncheon. "Can you imagine her at a gala? She wouldn't even know which fork to use." Another whispered, "She's undeserving. Ethan must be bored to waste his time on a nobody." The ridicule seeped into Amara's world, too. At the town's farmers' market, strangers whispered behind her back. A few bold ones confronted her outright, asking if she was using Ethan for money. Though their words stung, Amara held her chin high. She reminded herself of who she was, a woman of integrity, raised to value hard work and honesty, not the opinions of people blinded by wealth. Ethan, watching the storm unfold, felt something stir within him that he had not expected. Protectiveness. For years, he had brushed off gossip with indifference, but seeing Amara targeted ignited a quiet anger. He admired her composure in the face of cruelty, yet part of him ached to shield her from it all. For the first time, Ethan realized this wasn't just fascination. It was the beginning of love. Ethan began slipping away from his polished world more often, trading boardrooms and cocktail parties for the quiet rhythm of the countryside. At first, the locals stared in disbelief when the billionaire rolled up his sleeves to help mend a fence or carry bales of hay. But Ethan didn't care. He relished the sweat on his brow, the dirt beneath his nails, the simple satisfaction of honest work. Amara watched him with cautious amusement. She couldn't quite believe that a man who owned skyscrapers could stand ankle-deep in mud without complaint. Yet Ethan did more than endure. He laughed at his own clumsiness, listened when her father explained farming techniques, and ate cornbread at her mother's kitchen table as though it were finer than any five-star cuisine. Evenings often ended around a bonfire, the night sky alive with stars. There were no cameras, no shareholders, no judgmental stares, just the crackle of firewood and the warmth of shared silence. In those moments, Ethan felt something he hadn't known he craved: freedom. No one expected perfection from him here. No one wanted his money. He was simply a man, sitting beside a woman whose laughter felt more precious than any fortune. For Amara, the walls she had built began to soften. She saw not the billionaire splashed across magazines, but the man who confessed he sometimes hated his empty penthouse, the man who stumbled over farm chores yet kept trying. With each glance, each shared smile, the tension between them grew, delicate, undeniable, and alive. Ethan knew the countryside had given him a glimpse of happiness, but he also wanted Amara to see his world. Against his better judgment, he invited her to a grand charity gala in the heart of the city, a glittering event held in a ballroom lined with chandeliers and walls of glass. He hoped she would fit in, hoped society would see what he saw in her. Amara arrived in a modest but elegant dress her mother had sewn for her, her natural beauty glowing without diamonds or designer labels. But the moment she stepped inside, she felt the weight of 100 stares. Women draped in couture whispered behind jeweled hands. Their laughter followed her like shadows. "Is that her?" one socialite sneered. "The farm girl. She doesn't even belong in this room," another muttered. Ethan noticed, but before he could intervene, the whispers turned into open mockery. One woman deliberately brushed against Amara, spilling champagne near her shoes. "Oops. Guess mud isn't the only thing she can step in," she said with a cruel smile. Amara's pride flared, but so did her pain. She excused herself quietly, her chest tightening as she walked out into the cold night air. The realization hit her hard. This was Ethan's world, a world where she would always be seen as less, no matter how strong or dignified she remained. Inside, Ethan searched frantically for her, guilt knotting in his stomach. He had underestimated the cruelty of his circle and overestimated the strength of blending two worlds so far apart. Watching her retreat into the darkness, he finally understood. Loving Amara would not be easy. It would demand sacrifice, defiance, and courage he had never been forced to summon before. Ethan found Amara the next day, her eyes still shadowed with the hurt from the gala. He tried to reassure her, telling her the whispers meant nothing, that she was stronger than the shallow judgments of people who thrived on cruelty. But Amara only shook her head. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They will never see me as anything more than a joke. And I won't let your name or mine be dragged through the mud because of this." The words cut deeper than she realized. For the first time, Ethan felt powerless. Outside forces he had always ignored now pressed in from every direction. His business board held an emergency meeting, warning him that his personal life was damaging the Harrington reputation. Investors grew restless. His own family hinted that he was jeopardizing everything they had built. Ethan stood at a crossroads. Conform to expectations, marry into wealth as everyone anticipated, and keep his empire safe, or fight for the one woman who made his world feel real. Meanwhile, Amara wrestled with her own decision. A scholarship offer from a university in another city lay on her desk, the acceptance letter still unopened. It was her dream, an opportunity to grow, to learn, to build a better future. And now, it seemed like the only way to protect Ethan from further scandal. Both hearts ached with love, yet both believed stepping away was an act of sacrifice. The distance between them widened, and the threat of goodbye loomed closer than ever. The press had gathered expecting another headline-grabbing announcement from Ethan Harrington, perhaps a billion-dollar merger or a new global venture. Cameras flashed as he stepped onto the stage, his usual composed expression replaced by something rawer, more human. He began with the expected words, thanking shareholders and journalists for their time. But then his voice shifted, steady yet charged with emotion. "For years I've built empires," he said, "but none of it has given me what I truly sought: authenticity, peace, and love." The room hushed, reporters leaning forward in disbelief. Ethan paused before continuing. "You've written countless stories about the women I've rejected. Today I'll tell you why. Because none of them were her. Amara Johnson. Gasps rippled through the crowd as he spoke her name. He dismissed the wealthy suitors with a single line. Money and status can buy attention, but not love. And I will no longer pretend to be satisfied with anything less than the woman who makes me feel alive. The room erupted. Flashes blinding, questions shouted. But beneath the chaos was an undeniable respect. For once, Ethan Harrington wasn't hiding behind wealth or image. He was a man who chose love, publicly and unapologetically. Amara sat on her porch, suitcase by her side, the scholarship letter folded in her pocket. She had convinced herself that leaving was the right choice. For Ethan, for herself, but her heart felt heavier with every passing minute. Then, the sound of tires crunching on gravel broke the silence. Ethan's car came to a halt and he stepped out, not in his tailored suit, but in rolled-up sleeves and worn boots, as if he belonged there. His gaze found hers immediately. "Amara," he said, breathless from urgency. "Don't go. I don't want a future without you." Before she could reply, Ethan reached into his pocket, not for a diamond ring, but for a simple silver band. "I'm not offering wealth or status. I'm offering myself, your equal, your partner, your man. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Amara's eyes. For the first time, she saw Ethan stripped of image and empire, just a man who loved her without condition. She nodded through her tears. "Yes, because love is enough." Weeks later, under a golden sunrise, Ethan knelt beside her in the fields, planting crops with calloused hands. City and country, wealth and simplicity. Two worlds united in the soil of love.